Hey, everybody, good evening. Welcome to you. It is Tuesday night, the 8th of April, day 2 of Lori Vallow Daybell's trial. And boy, do we have a lot to talk about. Holy smokes, today was a busy day in court. I shouldn't say only, I should say 3 witnesses, but so much stuff that the jury saw for the first time. And it's kind of interesting. It's actually quite interesting. We saw the gun, we saw the bat, we saw a lot of talk about CPR. We saw 100 photos around. Well, 100 photos were admitted, give or take. We saw a lot of stuff tonight or today, and we'll talk about as much of it as we can tonight. I'm Nate Eaton. This is Courtroom Insider. So glad you're with me. If you're brand new here, every night we're breaking down the Lori Daybell trial here in Phoenix, Arizona. And this has been a long time coming. The alleged crimes happened back in July of 2019, the death of her fourth husband, Charles Vallow. And the trial has just begun this week, and it has taken off because one of the reasons is she is representing herself. So let us know where you're watching from. If you have any questions, we'll try to get to those questions at the end of the program tonight, along with a couple of shout outs and a couple of cities from where you're watching from. Love to hear where everybody's watching from. Let's jump right in. Here's what we've got tonight. Another juror is gone. That's 2 jurors in 2 days. It's crazy to see and crazy that this is happening, but it did happen once again, and I'll talk a little bit about why it happened, or at least what we know. 3 witnesses took the stand, as I mentioned today, and we will go over what those witnesses said. Lots of photographs. We had evidence that came out. Trina K brought the evidence, and the jurors saw it. We, of course, will remember Charles Vallow. This trial is all about him. Shout outs, cities, and your questions. We'll get to it all tonight here on Courtroom Insider. Let's start with talking about the juror issue. So, right when court started today, the judge, outside the presence of the jury, said, we need to discuss juror number 4. He went into closed sidebar with the prosecution and the defense. Headphones came on, and then the judge said, I motion that juror number 4 is dismissed. And that was that. He was gone. Actually, she was gone. I should say she was gone. One of the 3 women on the jury is now gone, so there's 2 women remaining and 14 jurors total, 12 men. Then there was another juror who wanted to bring to the judge's attention that yesterday, when that body camera footage was shown in court, he was reminded that he had likely seen that footage years ago on YouTube. A friend showed it to him or something along those lines, and so he wanted to be sure that the judge was aware of it, and the judge brought him in, questioned him individually, and didn't have any concerns. Neither did the prosecution, neither did the defense, so the guy stayed on the jury. But I have to say, it's very interesting to see the jury practices in Arizona versus Idaho. I learned today that they don't sequester juries here. They didn't in Idaho except during the death penalty phase of Chad's case. But I now, twice, 2 days in a row, have gone down to the diner and outside the courthouse during lunch, and you see the jurors there just wandering around. Apparently, they don't all eat together like in Idaho. They buy their own lunch, and I went outside to record a video and to do an interview with Dateline, and I needed to be sure that I walked away from them because I did not want them to hear me talking. Just a very different thing, and it's I guess a little worrisome. I'm not criticizing the judge or criticizing the court system. Don't take it that way. It's just you have to be a lot more careful. And maybe in first-degree murder cases, it's a lot more serious. But man, there's so many people that came to the courthouse to watch this, and other people. I got in the elevator with a lady who was telling me that she felt the same way, that they're in line at the diner and there's a juror right behind them, and they got to be quiet. They can't talk about the case. So let's hope we don't lose any more jurors. There's 2 alternates left, and we're only on day 2. If you lose any more and you get down to the pool and then you lose one of them, it could be a mistrial if you don't have a jury, and then we got to do this all again. Lori's 3rd trial, that happens. 4th, including Brandon. So that's what happened with the jury there. Now, we began the day after that issue was taken care of. Scott Cowden with the Chandler Fire Department, he was back on the stand. You may remember yesterday he concluded his testimony with Trina K. Now it was Lori Vallow's turn to cross-examine him. She asked him what color shirt Charles was wearing when the firefighter arrived, if they used special scissors, which they do, to cut off the clothing She asked him questions about CPR. This was kind of a theme throughout today. Was CPR done on Charles? How long was it done? What kind of training did the officers have to do CPR? Here's a little bit of the back and forth with Lori and Scott Cowden about his CPR training and the questions she had for him.
Have you taught people who have never done CPR before?
Have I taught those individuals? Yes.
Right. And not just like people renewing their certification, but both.
Correct.
Okay. How many people would you say that you've taught that have never done CPR before?
Never done CPR, and it's probably in the hundreds over that long of doing that.
So you'd be familiar with how a first timer would react?
Yeah, you try to forewarn them what to expect.
Okay. So these first timers, they have to be taught the appropriate place to place their hands. Would that be fair?
That is part of the course, yes.
And so do you show them, or do you just tell them in class where to put their hands?
It's a video-based system through American Heart. There's a curriculum that we would have been following.
Okay. So if you could only tell them, like over the phone, that might be difficult for them to know the correct placement of their hands if they've never done it before.
I guess it depends on the instructions that the dispatcher gave. Ultimately, if I was telling somebody over the phone, you want to put your hands on their chest, on the lower part of the chest. It's that kind of simple, so to speak.
Okay. But without the video, if you were teaching a class and you didn't have the video, it might be difficult, right? For a bunch of first timers?
Objection, speculation.
Overruled. You can answer.
Does it mean answer? Oh, okay. Sorry. Can you repeat the question then?
Yeah, so it might be difficult. If you didn't have the video, it might be difficult, for a bunch of first timers to know exactly what to do if you just had to tell them middle of the chest, lower chest.
You could obviously show on a person. You could show on yourself.
If you couldn't show them and you could only tell them, could it be difficult?
I suppose it's possible depending on the person.
Okay, that's fair. So do you think that your CPR class would be fairly successful if you had no visuals?
Objection, relevance, speculation.
Next question.
I got it, Your Honor.
I don't know if you caught that. Trina K objected. Lori, the judge sustained it and said, next question. And Lori said, I got it, Your Honor. Lori seemed to be insinuating that Alex maybe didn't know CPR, and if he was instructed on the phone how to give CPR, he could have been nervous or could have done it the wrong way because he didn't know how to do it. The firefighter says he was on the scene for about 20 to 25 minutes. He was part of the crew that originally called the time of death for Charles. But here is the interesting part. I don't think Lori caught it, but listen to this phrase where she asks a question about what he reviewed before he testified, and see if something sticks out to you that the jurors remember. They don't know anything about this case, but he says something that I want you to listen to. We'll talk about it.
In preparation for your testimony here today, did you review the 911 call at all?
No, not in preparation for today. Not the actual audio? No.
No.
No, not today. Not for this.
What did you review for today?
I was able to look at the incident times were dispatched by Phoenix Fire Department. I was able to look at the paper documentation. I was able to see my testimony from Idaho. I was able to see my testimony with Chandler PD when they came to the fire station a couple of weeks after this incident.
His testimony from Idaho. Now, I'll be honest, I heard it, you went on and put it out, and one of you on X, my ex, immediately said, whoa, testimony from Idaho? How many of the jurors are like, wait, Idaho? They had not heard, they don't know about Idaho before this. Now, don't you wonder in your mind if they're thinking, what happened in Idaho? Why did this guy have to testify in Idaho? the door was opened a little bit to Idaho. I don't know how the prosecution did not object. Lori didn't say, wait, I want that struck from the record. Where will this go? Will the prosecution say, Your Honor, I mean, this is their witness. So I don't know if they could say, he brought it in, or maybe they just let it go. We didn't hear anything more about Idaho today, but it was an interesting phrase that the firefighter brought in to talk about Idaho. Lori asked about the scheduling, the procedure, and then we heard a lot about the crunch of CPR. We heard about this yesterday, and it was brought up again today that when you're giving somebody CPR, generally the cartilage breaks, the ribs might break. You hear like a popping noise, like if you're popping your knuckles, and there's an indentation on the chest. There was no signs of that on Charles, and when they went to give him CPR, they heard that crunching noise. Lori asked a little bit about that.
Is it possible that if there was a wound to the chest, that doing compressions on that could cause other damage?
I suppose it's possible, but ultimately it doesn't matter. If the heart isn't beating, it's what you got to do. It's the appropriate treatment.
So would a common person who doesn't know how to do CPR maybe hesitate about pushing on a bullet wound?
Objection, speculation.
Sustain.
But you wouldn't.
Can you repeat the question?
You wouldn't hesitate to push on the bullet wound if the heart was stopped?
No, I wouldn't.
And you would have to assess if the heart was stopped in order to do that?
Yes, you would check a pulse like we did. We would, use our equipment like we did.
Okay.
So he talks that he wouldn't hesitate. There was a bullet wound in Charles. Lori again insinuating that maybe Alex was nervous to give CPR because of the bullet wound. I can see the line of questioning. It maybe does raise some interesting points. And maybe if Alex had not told the dispatcher that he had done CPR, instead said, I'm scared. I don't know how to give CPR. I'm worried I'm going to make it worse. He was just shot. I don't want to affect the bullet. Maybe had he said all that, it could be understandable, but he testified. We haven't heard the 911 call yet in court. I don't know if they'll play it because it was Alex and he's dead. Him saying that he had done CPR. So interesting chain of events there, and interesting to see how Lori goes on to question the witnesses. Trina came back on cross-examination, on redirect, I should say, about that CPR point, about the bullet wound and giving CPR to somebody with a bullet wound. And here's how she asked the question, and here's how Scott responded.
You were asked about whether or not you should perform CPR on a person who has a gunshot wound. Is there any reason why a person with a gunshot wound would not need to have blood circulating through their body to bring oxygen versus some other type of injury?
No.
Is the whole point of CPR to make sure that blood is circulating to get oxygen to their brain
Yes.
so that they don't go brain dead?
Yes.
So she quickly counteracts that, yeah, they might have a bullet, but the whole purpose is to keep them alive. Doesn't matter. And Lori went down that line of questioning with him. You can go watch his whole testimony. We have it on our YouTube channel if you want to hear everything he had to say. Next, our third witness for the trial, or our fourth witness for the trial, I should say, is Kent Keller, also firefighter with Chandler, retired, was there 32 years. He also noted that when he entered the home that day, that July 11th, he was surprised again, like all the other witnesses have said, how little that there was in the house. There wasn't any furniture. It actually made it easier for them to work. They didn't have to push stuff out of the way. Charles was lying on the ground, and he began to get to work and assess the scene. And he was the guy that was there with his crew. He said that he was surprised Charles was a big man and there was a little blood. He was expecting more blood. He went on to talk about skin modeling and lividity, which sets into a body after the person dies. Do you remember we heard about lividity at Chad Daybell's trial? John Pryor called it lipidity, but it's lividity, where the blood pools and goes to the lowest section of the body. And within the next witness after this, we actually saw those photos. I'm going to show you one tonight, not of Charles's body. We're not going to show that. In fact, they didn't broadcast that, but we did see it in the courtroom. We saw a lot of photos of Charles's body on the ground, but the blood that was there. And just a forewarning, I'll give you a warning before I show it. I'm not going to show that now, but here was the Captain Kent Keller describing lividity, not lipidity, lividity and the skin, what happens to the skin when somebody dies.
So when he's rolled, you're looking at his back?
Back, right, from the back of the head to the back of the feet.
Okay, so he's completely rolled over so that you can see his back?
Yes.
Did you notice anything about Mr. Vallow's back that may have indicated he'd been there for significantly longer than you originally thought?
He did have lividity, so there was modeling, skin modeling and lividity. Once the shirt comes off, then you could see modeling on the skin, and lividity had begun to form.
Can you tell us what modeling means?
Modeling is sort of a patchy looking skin caused from hypoxia or not enough oxygen getting to the skin. I mean, you can have mottled skin for different reasons, but in this case, it would be from his heart not beating.
Okay, and then you said lividity. What does
Yes,
that
ma'am.
mean?
So lividity is the pooling of blood, and that takes longer, much longer. So the blood will begin to leave the tissues and gravity drain to the lowest part of the body.
So now you know, for those of you interested in science about how the body works. Sadly, we've covered this before in the past 2 years, but lividity had set in, meaning Charles had not just died seconds or minutes earlier. For lividity to set in, it's some time. I mean, it can be less than an hour, but it's not like 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Then we heard some interesting stuff about something that I personally had never thought of. Maybe I had. I don't remember if I had. Maybe you had. You probably had. If Alex Cox had really been beat up with a bat, was scared for his life, and had to pull out a gun and kill someone, and was hit in the head, would the EMTs not treat him? He never asked for treatment, never asked to be seen by them, not even like an inspection. Did I have a concussion? Nothing like that. And the firefighter says he overheard, he was there when Lori and Tylee showed up, and he overheard something that Lori said. We heard this years ago about the pool party. Do you remember this? About Lori talking about a pool party. Here is what the firefighter said in his testimony.
My job in particular is to kind of get a larger overview of the scene. So I did notice a person talking with PD.
And when you observed this person, did you notice anything that he appeared to be injured in any way?
No,
So no obvious injuries to you.
no,
If you had been asked to treat him, would you have?
of course,
Did you see that same person outside when you left?
yes.
And when you left, did you observe anything about him again that he appeared to be injured in any way?
No.
Did you ever see a female and a female teenager at the scene?
Yes.
Where did you see them?
They were across the street from the house we were at.
Do you see that person in the courtroom today?
I see the adult, yes.
Can you point her out and let us know what she's wearing?
Dark blazer at the defendant's table. Dark clothes, I'm not sure.
Okay. State will ask the record to reflect the witness has identified the defendant.
Mitchell?
Did you overhear her talking or saying anything?
I did overhear her talking with the police officers or someone. said something about not getting invited to a pool party because of the commotion at the house or something.
So Lori is saying to the cops, guess I won't get invited to a pool party because of all this scene. Again, abnormal behavior that I'm sure all these guys are thinking, what is happening here? Well, now it was Lori's turn, that woman in the blazer, to address and question this fire captain herself. And she, boy, did she have questions. There's a lot of them. Again, you can go back and watch all of her questioning if you want to. I'm just giving you a brief synopsis. And she wanted to know about lividity and about the skin of Charles and whether it's possible that medication could cause or affect lividity. Here's that line of questioning.
You explained the modeling being patchy looking skin
Yes.
because of no oxygen to the skin. Is that correct?
Decreased, yes.
And so will that continue to increase? I don't really understand. Would you say modeling is complete or in progress? How does that work?
I would say in progress. As less and less tissue had oxygenation, I would say it continues to model.
So would you say it was in early progress or late progress? How would you estimate that?
I could not say early or late, just modeling.
That modeling was present
Yes, yes.
at that point. So how long would it take for modeling to become present? That's kind of my question.
I don't know how long.
So it could be like
different for different people, I suppose.
So it could be a minute, 5 minutes.
Yeah, he's already indicated.
Hold on. Rephrase the question. I'll allow it, but make sure you let him answer before you ask your next question.
Okay. So it could be just a few minutes, possibly?
Possibly. I don't know.
Okay. And then lividity, you explained as a pooling of blood. The blood leaves the tissues and goes to the bottom. Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay. And you saw that as well?
yes.
And in your estimation, would that have happened soon? You know what oh, that's not a good question. In your estimation, that had begun?
Yes.
And was it advancing how far?
He had lividity on the back of his torso,
So does lividity,
backs of his arms.
does lividity start immediately after the heart stops? Is that what you were saying?
I suppose it does.
Okay. And if you were on any kind of medication, would that affect that as well?
I couldn't say.
All right. He finished testifying, and then we had several juror questions, which was interesting. I won't play them for you. Let me read them to you, though. So what happens is, in Arizona, the jurors can ask questions, and at the end of testimony, or while they have them, they can write them down and put them in a basket, and then they're collected and then given to the judge. We had a juror or two question yesterday that then Trina Kay asked, and this time there were several. There were 4, I believe, and one was there any attempt, the judge read these to the jurors, the judge read the juror questions to the witness. Was there any attempt to give a drug like ephedrine to the patient, one of those drugs that helps start the heart? Keller said no, in trauma situations it wouldn't work. That's more for like a heart attack. Another question, was ACLS protocol followed, advanced cardiac life support? Yes. Judge reads the third question. Was a physician patched in? I'm assuming on the phone. No. The firefighters, paramedics were trained and given the authority that they can, stop life-saving measures if they deem that they can be ceased. Another question, are firefighters allowed to determine the time of death? Yes, they're authorized to stop life-saving measures. So it was interesting to hear those juror questions. The jury asked those questions, and then Trina did a little bit of follow-up. Trina Kay did a little bit of follow-up after the judge asked those questions. And then the jurors were dismissed for lunch, but the proceedings continued. It wasn't quite lunchtime for those of us in the gallery or for Lori and the prosecution and the judge. Lori apparently filed a motion yesterday that there was a discovery violation from the prosecution. And we don't know all the details of it. I don't have the motion yet, and but a little bit of it was discussed, and it sounds like it revolves around Lonnie Dworkin, her expert, who wanted Charles Vallow's phone to extract all the data, but from last we heard a week or 2 weeks ago, they had not been able to do that. Lonnie had not been able to extract the data. So there was a little bit of argument over that issue. And here's how Lori argued in front of the judge. Remember, the jury's been removed from the courtroom at this point, so they don't know any of this, but here's how that played out before lunch.
In reading that affidavit, I would agree with you that that was my initial thought as well. But the problem is that the problem that we have here is that that software was available and those things were available and they were not handed over from the state. They were never handed over from the state, and they've had that information for years. So that's why we filed that motion, is because of our expert was able to download the one device that we got, that he was able to see that the complete downloads were never given, that these are reports of downloads when we know that the state had available the entire complete extraction in the first place. They just didn't give us the entire extraction. They gave us the reports of the extractions, the ones that they wanted us to have. So those were available according to the technology. They just didn't give them to us on all of the devices. But we only have proof of it on one device because that's the only device that we were able to do in a timely manner.
All right. I want to clarify a little bit. They gave you the full extraction that was available to them at the time.
No, they pulled a report from the full extraction and gave us that. That's what they gave us.
State want to respond?
Your Honor, when you extract data from a device like a cell phone, it is put into a formula where it is not readable by anyone, which is why then you use the Cellbrite technology to basically parse that data into areas that we can read and view and review. So
Is that what was given to the
that
defense?
is what was given to the defense, was the 2019 or 2020 version of the Cellbrite technology that was used to take that extraction and put it into a readable form so that you can look at, for instance, not having to search through all this data to try to find out a text message. All of them are put together with dates and times and people and locations.
Your Honor, I would request that we can have a hearing on this so that I can bring in Lonnie Dworkin and he can explain that what they did not give us.
Well, just reading his affidavit is what they gave you is what they had available to them at the time. There's no affirmative duty for them to, every time a new software version comes out that makes maybe more data available, to rerun all the information.
We're not claiming that it is. We're claiming that they had a full extraction and they gave us a report of that full extraction instead of the full extraction on all the devices. It's not what only was available to them. They did have that available, they just didn't give it to us. It's cherry picking. It's
Okay.
cherry picking is what we got.
I don't read your own expert's affidavit the same way you're reading it, but,
That's why I'd like him to be able to come in and explain it. Can we set that up?
well, we can set that up at some point, but again, this is all late and it's unlikely that anything that's happening would lead to him being allowed to testify, but maybe we'll do that this Friday or something. I don't know. We'll have to squeeze it in, but I'm not going to make the jury wait to do that.
Okay.
So if you're like, what's going on here? Lori Vallow filed her witness list late. On her witness list was an expert named Lonnie Dworkin, and he is an expert at analyzing data that's pulled down from cell phones. The state has already had their expert pull all this data. They turned it over to the defense, but you need a program to read the data. It's not readable, what Trina Kay was saying. Lori is accusing the state of cherry picking the data and only giving them, I guess, highlights or whatnot, whatever you want to call it. And So she wants her expert, she wants a separate hearing for her expert to come in and talk about why the state didn't give him everything. And it sounds like that hearing might happen on Friday. However, the judge is saying it might not even matter because I might not even let anything in with him because you filed all of this late. And even if Lonnie Dworkin's able to complete all this stuff, the state has a chance to have their own expert review it or get another expert to review it. So this would just delay it. And remember, we're 2 days into this trial. So I'm interested to see what happens. We'll see if there's a hearing on Friday outside of the presence of the jury with her expert, or if the judge just rules and says, sorry, you can't bring it in. Another issue came up that apparently some of Lori's witnesses were given subpoenas yesterday or this week, well, yesterday, Monday, that told them they needed to respond to the courthouse tomorrow. And there was no way, no phone number or any person for them to contact to verify that. Well, there's no way the defense is ready for their side of the case. It's still on the state's side of the case. So the judge had to clarify that those guys should not show up tomorrow and that I guess they'll contact Lori's investigator to find out the date. Interesting stuff there. Okay, after lunch, there was another juror issue. Luckily, there was no juror that left, but this was a juror who, according to Trina Kay, he had his phone out during the previous testimony and it looked like he was typing or something. And then when it came time for juror questions, he submitted a very advanced question. So she perhaps was wondering if he Googled something. So they brought in the juror. The judge asked him one-on-one, did you Google anything? He said, no, I was texting my daughter to wake her up. He said, please put your phone away. Yes, the jurors are allowed phones in there. That's another thing that kind of caught me off guard, that, wow, they're allowed phones and they can have their phone. I mean, it was just another interesting side note. So the juror was fine there. We have the next witness to take the stand. Let me make sure I got everything with that one. Kent Keller. I think I did. There's a lot more. As I said, you can go. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Go watch Kent Keller's if you want more. Before the next witness took the stand, Daniel Coons for Chandler Police. This is the one that Lori argued about a few weeks ago. She was upset that the defense or that the prosecution listed him as a quote unquote normal officer, which you can, a normal witness rather than an expert. If you're an expert witness, you can share your own opinion of things. If you're a normal witness, you need to testify to the facts. You can't really state your opinion. And, you know, it'd be like if I was called to be an expert reporter versus just a reporter who witnesses something. Lori did not want this guy as an expert on gun trajectory, bullet trajectory, things like that. The state argued that he should be able to come in. He was an officer for so many years. I don't remember how many years. And he responded to the scene and knew about firearms and taught SWAT, sniper classes, things like that. The judge did say that he could come in, Daniel Coons, retired Chandler Police, and that Lori would have the option to cross-examine him on anything that she felt was out of place. So he took the stand, and we saw lots of exhibits. I'm going to go through some of these. One exhibit. This is an overhead shot of the front room. You can see here, let me get on my little drawing tool here. Let's see, we'll go with yellow. Here is actually, oh, too late. I was going to do another color because they have yellow on their map. But here is Charles Vallow's body. Here is his hat, I believe, and then the bat was right here. This is the entrance to the room, to the house. And there's bedrooms and kitchens, bathroom, things like that. He showed an overhead view. This was not to scale so that people could kind of see the layout of the house. Next, he showed measurements of things that were found in that room. The bat, Charles's head, his waist, his right hand, left foot, hat, sorry, the bat, and then the hat. The casing, the north casing and the south casing, there were two casings, the projectile and the floor impact. The bullet, one of the bullets went through the floor. And the distance from there. We have a picture, a photo. Trina Kay asked to admit, I believe, around 100 photos. We didn't see them all. We saw a lot of them today. But here's the house with the crime scene tape across the front, as you can see. Here's Alex's truck, the same truck that went to Yellowstone in Idaho. We know because of the plate. The back of the truck, We have the inside. This is a pool of blood. Here's where, if you're squeamish, it doesn't get super graphic. Well, I shouldn't say, based on what we saw today in court, this is nothing, but we do see the blood pool there. This is where Charles's body was in front of this mirror. And they put placards here to mark the evidence, like his hat, the bullet casings. There's some flip-flops that were in the entry. Number 13 marks where the bullet, see that? That went into the floor. So we saw that in court today. A closer view of the bullet going into the floor. There were also photos that showed the bullet, the other bullet going into the baseboard of the home. This is the gun, the weapon that Alex Cox used. Here's just a picture of some of the evidence. They actually brought the physical bat, the physical gun, the physical piece of floorboard. You can go back and see all this. Some of the photos, the order from the court is that the media couldn't show anything inflammatory or extremely graphic, and there was a lot of graphic stuff today. So I'm not going to show you that. We didn't show that on our broadcast earlier. You can go back and watch it and not be worried about seeing a dead body there. But the detective here, the retired officer, talked a lot about the evidence and a lot about the projections of the guns, the bullets. Here's a little bit of what he said when questioned by Trina Kay.
You given more than one chance to go through a house and try to collect evidence, or is it sort of a one-time shot?
Usually it's a one-time shot.
So if you aren't sure if something is relevant, do you collect it?
Yes.
So that later, if you determine it is, you have it?
Correct.
And if you determine it's not, then no harm, no foul?
Well, I don't know about no foul, but yeah.
So in this case, did you know whose hat that was?
I did not.
Okay.
One of the things that he testified about is, Mr. Coons, is that they use a tool, a camera called a Lizard Q, and you put the camera on the tripod and it takes a gazillion photos around the room, like just like I guess a time lapse or whatever you could say. It does it in a circular, and it does it from a lower level and a higher level. And we actually saw the photo, and it like turns it into kind of a 3D projection, so you can scan around the room and see it completely. You can see it from like waist level or up here. Really fascinating to see that. The photo of the entire room, and you can zoom in and zoom out. It's really sophisticated technology, but that's not the only photos they use. They obviously go around and take as many photos as they can, because that's their one shot to get in there when the scene is fresh and get the pictures that they need. And, you know, this day and age, you can go around and have 5 million photos on an iCloud and store it, or keep it on a digital device and not worry that you're going to run out of space. And that's exactly what they did. Everything was photographed. He said, you don't know what's relevant. You don't know what's going to be relevant or what is not going to be relevant. So you photograph everything. Photos of Charles's hat. And he also noticed that there was no blood on Charles other than what was underneath him, and other than a little bit on his chest. And here's a little bit more of his testimony.
What did you find there? What is this orange thing there? And we see a whole lot of placard numbers.
Right. So the placard numbers are obviously identifying particular items that are going to be seized as evidence. That we have the orange bag with what appears to be a gun box inside, and then we have the pistol. And the 3 placards next to the pistol are specific for the pistol itself, the magazine from the pistol, and potentially the chambered round in the pistol.
Okay. So 74, is that a close-up of that pistol?
It is.
What kind of pistol was that?
Pardon?
What caliber was it?
It's a .45.
Is that the same caliber as the casings that you had found in the front room next to Charles?
Yes.
Does this show another angle of that pistol in 75?
Yes, looking at the top of the pistol.
When the pistol, as we see, is picked up in 76, the individual's wearing gloves. Why is that?
Again, to help preserve the evidence. In the event that DNA were to need to be done, we could articulate that we did not touch it with our bare hands to impart our DNA onto it.
There were, again, so many photos that were shown today. Here was one of the interesting parts that I thought Trina did a good job of really stressing is the lack of blood in the house and photographs to back it up. Here's how that back and forth went.
Did you observe any in the bedroom?
No.
Do you go into the master bathroom and check there as well?
Yes.
The 134, 135. Did you observe any evidence, blood evidence in the master bathroom?
It did not.
And again, checking even the toilet itself as well as the trash can
Yes.
that we see in 137 and 138. So other than the one drop or whatever smear of blood on the kitchen faucet, did you see any other blood evidence at the scene?
No.
Let me put that in a different way, other than what was around Charles's remains.
Correct. No trails, no swipes, nothing that other than the sink faucet in the kitchen and the area where the body was.
Okay, I don't know about you, but I have a son who gets nosebleeds. Not so much now, but he has in the past. Love you, Everett, in case you're watching. There's been mornings where I have gone into the bathroom, his bathroom, the kid's bathroom, and it looks like a crime scene. There's blood on the wall, on the light switch, in the sink, on the floor. There's tissues galore full of blood in the garbage can. There's blood on the toilet, just everywhere. And you would think, holy smokes, what happened here? And it was a nosebleed that he went to take care of. Not one drop in that house, other than a little smeared on the tap or the faucet in the kitchen. Nothing in the garbage cans. No sign of any sort of bloody attack. I think that the jurors are going to remember that. Many of you are asking, what were the jurors doing all this? I will admit, today got a little, especially in the afternoon, the jurors, one, I noticed his eyes was closed. I'm not going to say if he was sleeping or not. Somebody else noticed and told me, like, hey, look at that juror. He's asleep. It did get a little bit technical, I guess you could say, but I think that the points were proven. You can go back and watch the testimony and you'll see, exactly what it was like. Now, this is the witness that Lori really wanted to question. This is the one she didn't want in. This is the one that she really needed to prepare for. So when Trina K finished, it was around 4 o'clock. We finished court at 4:30. Lori said, Your Honor, this is a big witness. I don't think she asked if she could start new the next day, but to prepare for it. And he said, well, we have 30 minutes. We're going to keep going. So she asked for time with her counsel. He gave her a few minutes. He said, keep it brief. Then they went into sidebar, and then Lori walked out of the courtroom. The jury, first of all, the judge dismissed the jury, and then Lori walked out of the courtroom for like 3 minutes. I don't know why. I think she had to use the restroom. That's my opinion. But we didn't know at the time. We're like, did Lori just leave? What's going on? Then she came back, gathered her thoughts, and now it was time for her to question this witness that she wanted to exclude, this witness that she felt should not be there, this witness that she clearly had questions for. This was her time to question. And she did go back and forth with him. She asked him about if this guy was present for the autopsy. He was. She asked him about CPR? Maybe she asked about CPR. Anyway, here's a little bit of that back and forth. Let me just play it for you.
So would you have it, what direction would you place him standing? Facing, I mean. Not standing, but facing.
For which
She's
shot?
talking about Alex.
The first one.
The first one in a more northeasterly direction.
Mm-hmm. And the second?
In a more northern direction with a slight deviation to the east.
So would you have him stepping forward? Is that what you're saying?
No.
What direction would you have him moving?
I didn't say the shooter moved.
You're just saying that he shot from a different angle?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you think he was standing in the same location?
I don't know that.
So according to where you put him standing with the first shot, the casing bounced off of the wall to the right and landed to the left.
Correct.
And then where you have him standing in the second shot, the same thing happened.
Approximately, yes.
And how far apart were those casings found?
I don't have the specific measurement of how far apart they were. They were a few feet.
So they're a few feet apart.
Yes.
So if he was standing in the same place, would they be a few feet apart or would they be closer?
It depends on a different amount of things, like how was the gun being held? Was it canted to the side? Was it not? What the angle was? Could the shooter have moved? A little, but it would have been the same general vicinity.
But you said he didn't move, according to you.
I said I didn't say he moved.
So he could have moved because they were more than a foot apart, the casings found.
A little, yes. Would have been in the same general area.
So he could have taken a couple steps.
Perhaps. Could have slid the body sideways. Anything that you can do to the body, it could have been done in a short area.
And is that common in, I don't know with shooting, is that common with someone to shoot once and then move and shoot again?
I'll sustain it on speculation.
In your experience as a firearms expert who fires a lot of guns, right? Would that be a common thing to do?
An objection is to speculation as to when, where, circumstances.
All right, I'll sustain the objection as to speculation.
I don't know if you could hear it, but Trina K objected to those questions and the judge sustained them. I wish that they would put their microphones in front of their face. We had this issue in Lori Vallow or in Chad Daybell, remember? Especially with John Pryor. It's like, speak into the microphone. I know they're in the moment of the court and they're not thinking about mics, but Lori went back and forth with him for a little bit. And then the judge said, would this be a good time to cut it? And Lori said yes. And so her questioning of him will continue tomorrow. It will be interesting to see the tone that she uses with him and how long she will ask these questions about the trajectory of the gun, whether Alex was standing where he was in the house, things that this guy really doesn't know, other than he knows about trajectory and how the bullet could travel, things like that, but he doesn't know where Alex was standing. The judge dismissed the jury, and then he had a couple of words for Lori, and this is what he said.
You answers a question to add something. You have a habit of when a witness answers a question to add something on the end of their answer. For example, during this witness, you said, I wasn't aware of that. Another time you said, I don't know much about guns. On previous witnesses, you've said, that's what I recall, or I'm not really sure. When you say those types of things, it's a form of testimony, okay? So I'm going to caution you to try to refrain from doing that. After the answer, just move on to your next question, okay?
Sure.
All right.
So I've noticed that too. I think a lot of people have. Lori will kind of give a little bit of commentary and say, oh, I didn't know that, or interesting. So we will see if the questioning changes for tomorrow. And with that, we were done for the day. I told you earlier that we saw a lot of photos of Charles laying on the ground an hour or so, several hours after his life was taken, shot to death in the room. And those photos, yeah, those people that saw them in there, we probably won't forget them. Kay Woodcock left the courtroom when they were shown. So did another family member, and it's hard to see. I can't imagine my dad, my sibling, lying there dead, shot twice, once in the heart, once in the shoulder, as he's down on the ground when he simply came to pick up his son to go to school. This is a photo, though, that I hope we can think about instead of that other one that was in the court today. Charles Vallow, handsome guy, fit, kind by all counts, ready to kind of start a new phase in his life, it sounded like, after all of the drama with Lori when he was dating, or at least had gone on a date with another lady, but still very much caring about JJ. Got a little kid who was his world, who he brought into his life. And the trial is about justice for Charles and about, of course, Tylee and JJ and Tammy Daybell. Can't forget them. We've talked a lot about them the past 2 years during this same month in April, but this trial is for Charles. And so tonight we're thinking about him and photos like this that hopefully are a little bit more positive than the ones we saw over and over and over today in court. We'll probably see him again tomorrow. Lori will likely show some of them. Maybe she will, maybe she won't. But the jurors have seen them, and they now have a clear picture in just 2 days as far as what these witnesses say happened at that home and how people were acting, mainly Alex Cox and Lori Vallow Daybell, Lori Vallow at the time, and Tylee. Not a lot about Tylee, though. Still don't know. I would imagine how many of the jurors are wondering, where's this Tylee? Where's the young woman that keeps getting mentioned? And the JJ who was in the car? Where are they? Like, I wonder if they're going to testify, they may be saying. And we will see when they learn the circumstances around where they are and what happened. All right, I want to do a lot of your questions. We have a ton of questions tonight. I do want to acknowledge our sponsor, Alan Browning. We thank Browning Law for sponsoring Courtroom Insider this go round, and we appreciate their support of East Idaho News and local news in general. Here are some shout outs. We have, let's see, Lynn Phillips from Hamburg, Germany. You've watched us for 5 years. Incredible. Thank you, Lynn. 5 years. Wow. Sorans living in Romania. You've been watching since I followed Chad and Lori to Hawaii. Well, thank you. I've never been to Romania. Would be great to go. Anya, Tasha, Reina Rodriguez, Beverly Parker, Carolyn Dundee from Scotland, Michelle Dunn, Ginny Reisinger, Natalie Cassidy, Kelly Beasley, and Brandon Kuhn. Ask you to wish Colby a happy birthday. Yes, Colby, happy birthday today. All the cool people were born in April. Colby, my birthday's next week. That sounded really braggadocious. Sorry. I mean to be humble, but happy birthday to you, Colby. Hope you have a great day. We have people watching in Paris, Akron, Ohio. I was born in Canton, Ohio. Poland, Sweden, Ireland, American Fork, Utah, Cincinnati, Ohio, Georgia, Rexburg, Idaho, Idaho Falls, Idaho. So many wonderful places that are watching from all over the world. So I can't thank you enough for watching and supporting us. And let's go to your questions right now. We have a lot of questions. Does the jury know anything about the kids being dead from Kelly? Technically, no, they don't. They have not been told. Now, JJ and Tylee's names were included on the questionnaire. I don't know specifically what the question said, though. We haven't seen that. But their names were included on the questionnaire. Probably if you heard the names JJ Vallow, Tylee Ryan on the news, could be something like that. Did police take photos of Alex's head wound? Kokomo says. If they did, we haven't seen him. That's a great question. There's still plenty more officers who will testify. I would think that they would have, and that we will see those down the line, because if it was self-defense, you'd want to get a close-up of the wound. So we'll see. Shanette says, I thought I heard something about Tylee going back in the house to get Lori's purse right after the shooting. Am I wrong? That does sound familiar. I don't think we have heard that in this trial. We do know that Lori sent, after all the alleged commotion, she sent Tylee out to be with JJ, who was in the car, to keep him calm. And then Lori eventually went out, and JJ was trying to get out of the car, but Tylee was keeping him in there. And then they all got on the car and left because they were scared. And that's when they went to the Burger King. And then Lori said the school wasn't open yet, so they went to Walgreens to get flip-flops so that Tylee and Lori could stand on the hot Arizona asphalt. And it was July, and it was hot that day. A few people told me that it was extremely hot that day. They remember that. Kelly Peterson, does the public get to hear what the jurors' questions are? I believe so. We did today, but yesterday there was a question, or was it this morning? One of the days there was a question. We never heard it. So it might be one of those things that the judge and the prosecution and the defense discuss, and then they decide, okay, we can follow up with this question. Who's going to ask it? Or maybe this question isn't relevant. So I'm still learning how that system works. Someone else asked, why is the court day so short? Well, I found some news out today. The judges, not only, this is not Judge Boreski's only case. He's got a ton of other cases. So every morning between 8:30 and 10:30, he's handling business with his other cases. He's holding hearings in his own courtroom. So remember how Lori's hearings were always like at 8:30 in that other courtroom and they were short? That's what he's doing. Then he comes over to the South Tower and presides over this trial from 10:30 to 4:30. The county sets the court calendar and says, we're going to hold 2 trials every day. One that will go 10:30 to noon and one that will go 1:30 to 4:30. And in a lot of cases, those trials are done in those times. There's the morning trial and the afternoon trial. This is obviously a longer case and much more detailed. So they're blocking out the entire days, 10:30 and then start time at 1:30. And that's why. And then the court ends at 4:30 so that the judge can go finish his business. So they take that trial model and took this one and fit it into there. Personally, I've only been here 2 days. I love it. I think it's great. I think it's with our ADD world, it's good to get up after an hour and a half, have a snack, have lunch, go back, have a break at 3:00. I know many of you are like, they're taking so many breaks. This is taking forever, but it does get tiresome in there, and especially for the jurors. Pink porcupine. What is this? The evidence will show. It can't. No one is alive to corroborate. She killed them all. How was that allowed? You mean her opening statement? Well, I mean, the evidence will show she was a hairdresser. That's true. She was a hairdresser. There's not much, it's her defense. There's not much say that the judge can say no. Now, you did see that Trina Kay did object at one point during her opening statement and the judge sustained it. So it's not like it's just a free for all, but you can, if you're, presenting your defense and laying out what your case is going to be to the jurors, you have a little bit more freedom versus when you're questioning the witnesses. How can the state, Sandy, how can the state show that the first call was self-defense, yet years later it was a homicide? I don't know. You mean, did they originally rule it self-defense? From what I understand, that was how the report came in, but the police never officially closed the case and deemed it self-defense. The case was still open when Alex died and then when it changed. So they were investigating it as self-defense, but as far as I know, they never officially ruled it as self-defense and then had to reopen the case and rule it as homicide. Did Alex say he retrieved his gun from the bedroom after getting hit in the head? If so, I wish the prosecution would explain that a little bit better. I believe he did. Yeah, he did say that that he was hit with the bat first, and that's why he had to go get the gun. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm sorry. This all blends together. It could be that he was just threatened. Yeah, because I don't think he got the gun and then was hit in the head and then shot him. I think he was hit first. If I'm wrong, please let me know. And I'll have to go back and listen to that. Have Tylee's remains been released to the family yet? Misty asks. Yes, Colby received the remains as with JJ and Tylee. He was the closest connection, blood relative to them. I believe he did share some of JJ's remains with Kay and Larry, and maybe some others got them too. But yeah, the remains have been released. Where can we send our pictures of us and our t-shirts? Oh, great question. Send them to me. You can send them to me on my Facebook page, Nate Eaton Reporter, or neaton@eastidahonews.com. Let me see. You can also find me here on Instagram, n.eaton, or tweet me, X me. That sounds dirty. Send me a tweet or send me an X. With the 2 conspiracy trials severed, could the sentences be concurrent or one have to follow the other? That's a good question. We were talking about that today. We don't know how the judge is going to handle sentencing. Normally, sentencing can take 30 to 60 days. There's a pre-sentence report done. Will the judge, at the end of this trial, assuming she's found guilty, say, I'm going to wait to sentence you once we have the other trial, and if they're both guilties, I'll do one sentencing altogether? Or, because they are separate cases, will he sentence her on this one first, 25 years to life, and then sentence her later on the second one. I don't know. I could see either way. Knowing this judge, he might want to be efficient and just do it all at once, but we will see when that happens, assuming she's found guilty. When she's convicted, can she appeal, claiming she didn't have time to prepare, even though she insisted on a speedy trial? That's from Sarah Barrow. I think she might try to do that, but I don't think it's going to fly. The judge has repeatedly said, if you continue, you can appeal. Or if you continue, you can have adequate time to prepare for your trial. Your other legal teams have told you they didn't have enough time to go through all the evidence. So I think he can mention that, and I think that will come up, and I don't think that would be a reason for the case to be overturned. Same with her representing herself. I don't think that they're going to be like, well, she said she had to do it. I don't think they're going to go there. Diane on Duncan Street. In the unblurred photo, did you see a bat near Charles? If the bat was near it, was there any blood on it? There was no blood on the bat. And they made a point to say that there were no indentations at the top of the bat, at the fat portion of the bat. Like it hadn't been hit. It was in not perfect condition, but it was still in. It's not like it had hit anything, and there was no blood. And the bat was close to Charles. Have you seen Lori eat or take breaks? No, I have not seen her eat. She comes in with a bottle of water. I imagine, will eat on the break. She does not. Her advisory attorneys have a room, and the prosecution have a room there at the courthouse. She doesn't go out with them. She goes out the other room, and they probably bring her a lunch from the jail. If your daughter in the future asked if she could interview Lori, would you let her? And is your wife going to be joining you for a few days in Arizona for the trial? Keep up the great work, Caroline. Oh, man, if Emmy wanted to interview Lori. I don't know. Well, let me ask you guys. Would you let your 11-year-old, soon-to-be 12-year-old, interview a convicted murderer? Knowing that the murderer probably won't tell the truth? I don't know. That's a great question. I might, just to see how Lori interacts with the kid. It's amazing what people will say to my daughter when for those of you wondering why my daughter brought into this, she does a weekly segment called 7 Questions with Emmy. She's been doing it almost 5 years now. She's interviewed over 300 people, celebrities, athletes, whatever. She's interviewed everybody from David Copperfield, Drew Barrymore, Michael Bublé, to our neighbors who are just as cool and cooler than those people. But she has not interviewed a criminal. So that's a good question. I think I would. Is my wife going to be joining me in Arizona? We've talked about it. We don't have any set plans for her to come down. It's really hard during the trial week because I'm so focused on work, and then I come home and do this, and then I go to bed. So maybe at the end of the trial, they might come down. They're in school though. They're busy. The kids are busy. A lot of stuff going on. So yeah. Did Lori look at you? Funny you ask. She did today. After the afternoon recess, I walked in, I was standing. She turned around and smiled at me. So she did look at me. Funny that you asked that today. Will the video of Tylee at the police station help Lori? Because if I recall correctly, she says no. Okay, apparently you're screaming no. Don't let my daughter interview Lori. Okay, thank you. I will think about your answer. There would have to be a lot of prep, and I'd have to be in the room. I'll say that. Okay, I don't know if the video of Tylee will help her. I recall that she said Charles came after her. Yeah, we put that video up on our YouTube channel. I don't know if it would help her. Can you explain the milkshake comment? Olivia, yes, that happened yesterday. One of the witnesses really threw everybody, a lot of people were confused. He was basically saying, I don't remember the question, but he was basically saying, if I had to bet a milkshake on it, I'd say this. That's what it meant. It was a funny term of, yeah, if it's a chocolate milkshake, I don't remember the exact term, but it took me a minute to process that he was saying, oh yeah, if I had to bet on it, if I had to bet $100 or a milkshake on it, it would be this. Have they figured out who the alternate jurors are? No, and they won't till the end. The judge it'll be like a raffle, like a lottery system. Now there'll be 2, and they'll randomly pull numbers, and that'll be that. Is there a reason we've not heard from Charles's other children? Jody asks. Well, they haven't been called as witnesses. They weren't there that day. I don't know if they want to be there. So far, they have not showed up at the courthouse, and they've really his 2 eldest sons have really tried to remain in the background, respect them for that. I've spoken with them, met them before, but they are not here thus far. Maybe they'll show up at the end for the verdict or for sentencing. They could give a sentencing statement. Do we know if at least part of Tammy's life insurance money will not go to pay for some of Lori's fines? Oh, I don't think any of it will go to Lori's fines. I think that money's gone. I think that they paid for attorneys. Lori had an attorney in the beginning. Chad had an attorney that he was paying. John Pryor, he sold the house. I think all that money is gone, and it's not going to go to Lori's fines. They spent that money quickly. They went to Hawaii, where it's quite expensive. Why do the jurors have phones? This is beyond my understanding, from Tom. Great question. I don't know. I don't know. Can we talk about the kid's death without, can the state talk about the kid's death without saying murder? Yes, I think they could. I just don't know how they would do it. But I'm sure they could bring it in somehow. Brandon, how come the female juror was dismissed today? No idea. We don't know. Something must have happened, and the judge discussed it off camera and in a sidebar, so we don't know the explanations. Lisa, I know you mentioned yesterday the trial was going quickly, but is this standard courtroom procedure? How is it they can't figure out all these issues before starting the trial? Okay, quickly meaning they've gone through, we know there's 21 witnesses. So far, we're up to 4 or 5 witnesses. So that's a quarter of the prosecution's witnesses already done. In Idaho, there were some witnesses. I think Ray Hermosillo was on the stand an entire day. Other trials move fast. You have witnesses that are on there for 4 or 5 minutes. Relatively speaking, when I said quickly, I meant it's moving at a rapid pace. There are holdups. You mentioned the issues. Why haven't they worked those issues out? Well, one of the main reasons is Lori Vallow is her own attorney, and that she did not want this trial continued. And so they're kind of doing it on the fly. For instance, the issue today with the expert witness. That was a issue that likely could have been discussed beforehand, but before the trial, but it didn't happen. Pamela, how do we know Charles took JJ to the car and left him in the running car to go in and retrieve his phone from Lori? Is there video to show this? How did she take the phone from him? I believe they killed him when he entered the home and no fight occurred. A lot of people might be with you, Pamela. We don't know. We know it's because the only person living now to talk about it is Lori Vallow. We do know that Alex Cox and Tylee did give interviews to the police, and they will likely call on those interviews to see what they said. Could they have all come together and made up a story? They could have. Could Charles have been shot the second he walked in the house? Perhaps. Absolutely. And then they talked about the bat and put the bat on the ground. And I don't know if the bat's been dusted for fingerprints. I know one of you asked that. So you're right. We don't know. And as far as we know, there's no video. There was no doorbell camera video from the home or across the street. I should say that now. Maybe they will. Maybe they will have video that they'll play at the trial. None has been released as far as we know. Why do you think Lori took Charles's rental car instead of her car to take Tylee and JJ to Burger King and JJ to school with Charles's phone keys and wallet? I don't think if Charles was alive when she left, Charles would have given her the keys. Just wondering. Good question. I don't know. I'm sure she wanted his phone. Thank goodness she took his phone. That's what pinged. That's what gave us the timeline of everything. But maybe Charles kept the keys in the car and she just went out and took the car and it was there. I don't know. I don't know the details to that. Why didn't they play the audio from police audio cameras of Alex yesterday that were played yesterday in court? The question for that was the body cameras. There was some hearsay on there. There was the officer talking to other people. And on one of them, he was describing what he was seeing throughout the home that he was able to testify to. Tess, can you bring Peggy and Jordan on Courtroom Insider? I think so, Tess, probably. Peggy has been on before. Peggy goes through all of your comments. She's watching. Everybody say hi to Peggy. She does a great job every night. We're trying to figure out the technology for me to Zoom her in to ask the questions maybe, but we'd have to figure that out with me being here, her being there. And I know we could probably do it, but we just need to figure it out. Jordan is just down the hall from me in the hotel. He was in here. We started 2 minutes late because there was an issue I needed to fix. Apparently there was a humming in my mic yesterday. So Jordan came to the rescue and it turns out it was likely the AC unit in my room. So it's really hot in here right now, but I'm doing it for you. So you don't have to hear the humming. Just kidding. It's not too hot. After the trial, will you try to interview Lori or the attorneys? Absolutely. I'd love to talk to all of them. I don't think they'll talk right after this trial, but maybe after Brandon's. Do we know if Charles really was a right-handed batter? I believe so. And we definitely know he was a batter. And we definitely know that he was an athlete. So I think we got all the questions in tonight. I know you have a lot more, and we'll be back again tomorrow. Again, here's where you can follow me: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and the YouTube. Subscribe if you haven't. We would really appreciate that. And I just appreciate you all watching. I hope that I'm not too long-winded at the end of these days. I wonder about putting too much in, putting enough in. Hopefully this gives you a taste of what happened. Court will be back in tomorrow, starts at 10:30, goes till 4:30 with the breaks, and we'll be back here tomorrow night with Courtroom Insider live from Phoenix, Arizona. Thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.